Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you. As always, every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we ask that you like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. There are two ears that need to hear this message. You can help us do that. We have a great show lined up for you. And don't forget, you can download this content and listen to it at your convenience on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. The dynamic duo are back. We have the two gentlemen that always get great reviews and great requests to come back on, because we're talking about a very difficult subject right now, something I think is really affecting people. So we have Glenn Motz, of course, Medicine Hat Cardston Warner, and we have Larry Brock, Brantford Brett. Thanks for coming back, gentlemen.
Great to be here.
All right, excellent.
Thank you.
Again, we keep talking about renaming the show. We may have to do this. All right, let's start over with let's start off with the firearms issue. It's before Parliament as we speak. Actually, Bill C-21 is being talked about. I was just watching the debate before coming over here to the studio. And what is going on with that? That's a piece of firearms legislation. It's deeply flawed. Tell us what's going on there.
Well, right at the moment, it's being debated at report stage in the House. It was been rammed through at committee stage by a programming motion by the Liberals. They restricted debate, restricted any sort of conversation or amendments to any of the government amendments and stuff that were there. 5 minutes per party. That's all we got to talk about each individual amendment. Legislation this important, this critical to millions of Canadians, and so deeply flawed, requires full democratic debate. And the Liberals just proved again, A, they're out of touch with a flawed, a misguided bill, and thwarting democracy when it comes to the whole idea of limiting debate. And they're limiting debate not only at committee. We had two midnight sittings, and then now at the report stage and third reading, again, limiting debate to get it rushed off to the Senate.
So I guess the most contentious issue was the complete, I guess, I don't even know how to describe it, just complete focus on hunting rifles for the most part. They took that away, thanks for all the pressure that was got, but they did it in a sneaky fashion now. It's still pretty much there.
Exactly. So what happened is Bill C-21 was debated in the House as a handgun freeze and a few other things. Then in November, they introduced a bunch of new amendments, including what the government called G4 and G46. And it provided a definition, a new definition for a prohibited weapon that included shotguns and hunting rifles, and for the majority of them. And then a bunch of other definitions as well. Pushback by Canadians. Thank you for those that are watching for your pushback on that to the government. The government acquiesced and withdrew those amendments in early February. We sat on Bill C-21 for probably almost 2 months until finally they came back with a new definition of prohibited weapon and other things. Again, but groups that came to the committee said, listen, this bill is not going to improve public safety. The red flag laws that the Liberals and NDP pushed through, we had Paula Souvienne and 20 other women's groups that said, please don't pass red flag laws, which has a victim ex parte go to a judge and ask for some remediation, firearm seizures, whatever it might be. Let the police do their job. That's what they are asking Liberals to do. Oh no, Liberals and the NDP gathered together to vote in support of that, which is really, really bizarre. But anyway, that's where we're at. Again, this is a misguided approach. It isn't going to improve public safety. Legal, law-abiding Canadians who own firearms are not and have never been the problem with gun crime in this country. It's criminals who acquire firearms illegally. The majority of crime guns in this country are smuggled in from the U.S. That's where the focus should be. Should focus on, stopping the revolving door of justice, dealing with criminals and not legal firearm owners, and giving some resources to plug those holes.
If I could weigh in just a moment on the red flag laws, I commend all the work that my colleague Mr. Motz has done on this committee and those of our colleagues for really pushing this issue and making some changes. But unfortunately, this bill is still flawed in so many significant areas. That's to Glenn's point about public safety. I look at it from a legal lens. Everything that I do in this House, I have that legal lens. And what they're doing is they're actually exacerbating and creating to more of a backlog in our criminal justice system from coast to coast to coast. Already we are suffering from the impacts of COVID in terms of scheduling trials. As you know, we've got a Supreme Court of Canada decision named Jordan that mandates that trials be completed within so many months, so many years, depending on the jurisdiction. Now we're going to have the floodgates open up with all of these applications from legitimate and probably illegitimate complainants who just want to exact a measure of revenge. It is going to just really tap our very limited resources in the justice system already. Let the police do their job. Section 117 of the Criminal Code gives the police the powers to enter a home, to remove a weapon, and to hold someone accountable for a period of time if there is sufficient evidence to establish that this person is a harm to themselves or to others. The government did not need to exacerbate that issue.
It's frustrating, I think, to many law-abiding firearms owners that this is going on, to having to watch this, but also to watch all the issues going on around our country. And this is where the Liberals decided to put their focus, right? We have drug use that's out of control. Inflation's through the roof. We have a housing crisis. We have crime that is up 32%, I saw, and continues to go up. We have problems with our bail system. And the Liberals say, you know how we're going to fix this or take the focus off all of our failures? We are going to go after law-abiding firearms owners. Like, how frustrating is that? And just smoke and mirrors. Like,
yes.
You're, like you said, you're not going to solve the gang shootings. That's not going to stop. You're not going to stop the repeat violent offenders. That's not going to stop.
Criminals already don't
Does it
follow
go deeper? Well, I guess it doesn't go deeper than that, right? Like, that's what I think many people are wondering.
Well,
when will this government admit to Canadians that the lawful gun owners are not the issue?
That's
They
right.
have never been the issue.
Absolutely.
They are not responsible for the 32% uptick in violent crime across this country. This government needs to wake up and finally enforce and secure our borders, and to work with officials across the border to the United States to deal with the illegal smuggling system that is so ingrained within that society. They're basically outsmarting law enforcement. They're outsmarting politicians. That's where the illegal guns are flowing from. Our ports. Another example is containers not being properly thoroughly searched. We've got drugs pouring in across our borders, across our oceans, and now weapons. That's where the attention of this government should be. That's where we differ. That's where a Poilievre-led conservative government will put the resources where it's required.
and one other one, in addition to that, Larry, and thank you for that, is holding criminals accountable. When criminals get caught and get charged with offenses, you know, the chances of them getting out on bail now, for whatever the offense is incredibly high. And you know, Canadians call it the revolving door of justice. Conservatives call it the revolving door of justice, because that's exactly what it is right now. Back in my day, and in Larry's day as a prosecutor and as a policeman, we used to have called reverse onus.
Yep.
And so if a person had committed a criminal offense, was out already on some sort of judicial interim release, and they committed another offense, the onus is on them to show why they should be released. Not anymore. You know, that is changing. That has changed. And Larry sits on the committee that we're just discussing.
Yeah, and this might be a segue to discuss
The very next topic.
Bill
Well done.
C-46.
This is why you two are the dynamic duo.
Okay,
You
this
already
is
know where the conversation's going. What do you need me for? That's
Ca-
don't
ca-
answer
Canadian-
that. Don't answer
I
that. I don't
won't.
even want to answer that. Keep going.
Canadians need to know. This is hot off the press.
Yes.
We had a technical briefing that
Just
broke
hours
down
ago.
for technical reasons. we had a translation issue. But they delivered the draft of the bill to members beforehand. I took a look at it. And to use a phrase that I know my colleague has used, they've essentially put a Band-Aid, a very tiny Band-Aid on a gushing wound. Or to use the words of my colleague, Mr. Motz, putting lipstick on a pig. All right, they're using appropriate language, but the net effect is going to be essentially the same status quo that still exists. They've added some reverse onus provisions in the criminal code. We already have reverse onus provisions in the criminal code. And quite frankly, all of the topical stories that we have heard of individuals running amok, creating violence within our cities, killing people, maiming people, injuring people, are already those individuals who are facing reverse onus bail hearings. So adding more reverse onus provisions in the code does not address the underlying issue. And the underlying issue is because of our Supreme Court of Canada releasing two significant decisions, starting with Antic, then Zora, and the government introducing Bill 75, it has created a principle of restraint that it does not matter what your criminal record is like, it doesn't matter what your age is, it doesn't matter what the circumstances of the offense is. The default position for any justice, meaning a justice of the peace or a provincial court judge or a superior court judge, is this person needs to be released, regardless of whether it's a crown onus offense or reverse onus offense. That's in the mindset of a judge.
Well, I think I heard it this week, actually, just a moment ago, is reiterated in the House, that I believe it was Vancouver, 40 individuals, a very small percentage, were creating the vast majority of calls and issues for police. 6,000, that's right.
40 individuals created 6,000 offenses.
Committed 6,000 offenses in 1 year.
That should tell you all you need to know.
Yes.
Those people that don't want the help of the various organizations that are there to rehabilitate, don't want to participate in society.
Right, and those 40 individuals will not be impacted at all by this new Bill C-46.
Oh, they won't?
Will not be impacted.
That's the problem.
Because those individuals were still facing reverse onus. Nothing has changed. We need to see, in terms of real bail reform, we need to see a more emphasis on community and victim safety.
Right.
That's where we need. And this bill basically indicates that a judge must consider the community impact, the victim impact over a crime. Well, they do that anyways. Part of their whole analysis when they're hearing evidence and hearing submissions, whether or not a person should be released, are those very same factors. Codifying it in the criminal code will do absolutely nothing to increase community confidence and safety in our justice system.
The press conference is just going on. I was kind of watching it as I was making my way over here, catching bits and pieces. And it is frightening that it took this long for the government to even take action. And Larry just kind of outlined all the flawed bills, C-75, that started this ball rolling. But the fact that the amount of people that we as opposition brought to the House of Commons in our speeches, in our statements, saying that people are being victimized in our community. We're having people worried about being a victim of crime and noticing that things are not right anymore. And it took them years to actually move even a little bit.
Well, the part that's troubling is not only this bill on bail reform or C-21, or there's many other bills. This government has demonstrated repeatedly, and this is another example of just how out of touch they really are. No consultation, no understanding that if we introduce this, C-75 for example, it has the potential to have this impact. Like, there's just no forethought that goes into this. And then, as you said, Jamie, Canadians, victims groups, law enforcement, premiers, justice officials have said, and average Canadians said, like this, for example, the bail system is so broken, and it's been broken now since C-75 was introduced. And what's that, 4 years ago? 3 years ago? Mm-hmm. And nothing, even to introduce it. This was brought to them at that point in time and said, this is broken, this is going to cause problems, please don't, we need amendments to your bill. They refuse to listen.
So Glenn mentions examples where the government does not listen to important stakeholders. In this particular case, They actually were bombarded with information from stakeholders and still got it so massively wrong and completely out of touch. And that is what's so frustrating for me as a former member of the criminal justice system in terms of prosecution. This is going to be extremely disappointing to police agencies across this country, definitely disappointing to the premiers who really pushed hard to move this government to introduce this type of legislation. And quite frankly, they just ignored really solid, concrete suggestions from members of parliament and other stakeholders who really were projecting how this government could move on important legislation to make a difference. They failed us.
Did they ever? Let's quickly talk about our friend and colleague Michael Chong, if we could. It kind of ties into this whole government incompetence and the endless just failures that we just keep in front of us. Turns out through evidence that the government pretty much knew about this, really did nothing about it, knew that Michael Chong's family was being targeted back home in Hong Kong, didn't warn Michael Chong about it because of a vote he made on the floor of the House of Commons. To this public safety and how do we segue into it, right? Like if Canadians in general aren't feeling safe, we have members of parliament that are being threatened for votes they make on the House of Commons. And yet this government turns a blind eye. Why? Because it might have benefited them in the election.
Yeah.
This is your belly.
I might have teed that up just too good for you.
But you sat on the committee. You've done these.
I have. I've sat on PROC. I've sat on ethics. We are doing a deep dive with respect to the Trudeau Foundation and their role in terms of accepting monies for influence and gaining access to the Prime Minister. I think what is most disturbing is the level, and the government accuses, and to this day, today as a matter of fact, accuses the Conservatives of deliberately misleading or misinforming the House and misinforming the public, and using it for partisan gains, for fundraising, completely, missing the whole objective of what the legislation is all about. They have done the same thing regarding this particular issue. I think it has to be concerning to every Canadian that our government, whose number one role, regardless of fiscal responsibility, its number one role and mandate is to keep us safe and sovereign. And when you hear what this government has done in terms of turning a blind eye and allowing these police states, these police-run illegal operations in Canada, and allowing diplomats from the Chinese communist regime to be running amok in our society and bragging as to how they've influenced elections. And all of this information acquired by CSIS, Canada's number one spy agency, whose number one mandate is to run it up to the chain of command, right up to the Prime Minister. Which they did, and he did nothing, is appalling and disgusting. And that's why we need to have this government removed sooner than later so that we can restore safety and confidence and protection to all Canadians.
Willful blindness on behalf of this Prime Minister and Liberal government is for their own gain, to me, is grounds that Canadian public should say we've had enough. Can't trust this government. It's time for a Poilievre-led government.
Well, his Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, confirmed that the Prime Minister reads everything.
A ferocious reader.
He was. It's hard not to laugh at that, but yeah. So according to Katie Telford, yes, he's got his grip on everything. So where do we go from here? What are the next steps? I know C21. There's going to be a vote at some point
this week.
There'll be a debate on the new bail reform legislation or lack thereof coming up very shortly. So this week we're expecting the vote.
Yeah, so debate on report stage and third reading of C21 is today, tomorrow. There'll be some votes tomorrow on it, and then on Thursday is the final vote, and from there it'll be sent to the Senate. I'm hopeful that the Senate will gut this bill completely like we try to do at committee. Send it back, say, hey, this is flawed, start over again would be ideal. Not sure what they're going to do. At least I hope they give it an honest effort like we tried in committee.
Yeah, it is... I just watching every failure. Like last night, we had the housing minister. I'm going to go off on a topic just a little here because I've been dying to talk about this. The housing minister. I don't know if you watched the Take Note debate last night.
I did.
With the housing minister. It was a Take Note debate. Yeah. Gives us a chance to quickly rapid fire questions, right? And our leader Pierre Poilievre asked very simple questions. What's the average price of a home in Canada? What's the average rent? What's the average mortgage payment? Housing minister had no clue. No clue on his file on something that every Canadian is dealing with right now. We have people can't get into the housing market, and this housing minister had no clue what the average price was.
Wow,
it is absolutely incredible, and I know I'm getting those letters and phone calls and emails. I'm sure you are too, both of you. There's a lot of people hurting, and this government does not seem to care.
They don't care.
I think that's the theme of what we're talking about today.
On everything, they don't care.
But hey, we got a new passport.
Oh, let's not start that one.
I have a nice constant reminder of a young Justin Trudeau frolicking in a lake.
And a squirrel eating a nut.
That's meaningful to me as a Canadian.
You know,
I say facetiously.
Yeah, I figured there was. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think it. Literally.
You know, that is literally a great description of how lost this government really is.
Yep.
They have lost their way. They've lost the ability to govern. In fact, they never really had it, but they've lost their way big time. And we need to do. Canadians need to realize that. The reason we are in bad a shape is we are economically. People losing hope, losing their homes, can't get into homes, can't afford to live, can't afford groceries, are not safe in our communities, have many other issues that we're dealing with as a country. This government wears it. This Prime Minister and this government wears these issues, and the only way to solve this problem is to next election.
Pack their bags.
Well, here's another issue that hasn't been talked about. I'm probably going way long on the show here. Yes, I am. Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, where has she been? She hasn't been in the House, I think, 2 days and 2 months, I think. 2 days and 2 months,
She's around the country, around the world, interviewing for a new job.
She won't even go up before committee for 2 hours to talk about her budget. Billions spent and doesn't give the time of day.
$490-some billion budget, and she...
But she's only giving 1 hour.
1 hour, not two. Not 2. You don't want to overburden her.
No.
She's super busy, you know.
Right.
She's got things to do.
She does.
Yes.
Final comments, gentlemen.
Oh, where do we start? We've touched on so many major issues. I think the theme that at least I was presenting and what my colleague was presenting as well is just how broken this particular government is. They're well beyond the best before date. Every government has a shelf life. This shelf life is long and done. We need a new government led by Pierre Poilievre. We have a wonderful caucus. We're going to gain new caucus members in the new election. We are ready to restore Canada to its prominence, keep Canadians safe, keep us prosperous, keep roofs over our head, food on our table, and all the things that this government should have been doing for a number of years and has just failed us.
And for me, thank you, Larry. I think we talked a lot today about what's broken, and there's a lot to be talked about. But also, there is hope. The reason that we fight the fight that we do, you fight, our Conservative colleagues fight this fight is there's hope. And we're not going to give up the fight for this country that we love, for the people that we're here to serve. And, Poilievre-led Conservative government does bring hope to a country that is broken, to a government that's broken. And I'm excited to stick around to make that happen.
Absolutely. And we want to see that happen.
Absolutely.
I know. When I first met you, you had hair. So this is what Justin Trudeau is doing. We appreciate your time, gentlemen. Glenn Motz, Medicine Hat Carson Warner, Larry Brock, the one and only from Brantford Brant, the dynamic duo. Always appreciate having these two on the show. It's a great conversation. We appreciate your time as well. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time is when we have new content for you every single Tuesday. And don't forget, you can listen to it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That is the Blueprint.